I'm your host, Ian, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Nico. How's it going, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. We're back live. We didn't quite make it to the live recording last week with tech issues and the internet issues that we were having, but we're back this week, so I'm sure everyone's delighted to see your beautiful face.
And if they don't like my face, they like this one. Hello, Shia.
Come for the Nico, stay for the pussy.
Shocking
I
behavior.
thought I'd stunned you into silence there. For once, I thought you might have been stunned for words.
No.
No, of course not. Hello, Boomer. Welcome on in. Boomer says he's barely functioning right now, trying to get up and around. He's lurking, but he drank way too much last night.
Can I just say I'm glad we never did this yesterday, because that's how I was like. I also fell for a really dumb trick that Zia got me with.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so I had the hiccups, and she's like, pull your tongue and it'll get rid of your hiccups. I'm like, no problem, pull my tongue, and I just went, bleh,
that
puked.
was
Ah, why?
lovely. Well, I mean, in fairness, we would have been like this today if we'd managed to go for our original plans last night. We would have been hungover
That is
ourselves
true,
today, but
yeah.
I've been a little bit under the weather this weekend, so we had to knock that on the head. I was almost just wanting us to do it just for an excuse so I could post a photo going, see, we really are pals.
We'll have to do it next time you're off.
We will do. I seem to get the odd weekend off here and there quite regularly, so I'm sure it won't be too long. Anyways, we are a horror podcast, in case you haven't noticed. That deep dives into a different topic every single week in our quest to create a leaderboard of the best and worst horror movies of all time. This is episode number 86, and in today's show, we are talking all about the 2005 British horror movie The Descent. Now, before we get too far into it, I just obviously got to do a little couple of pieces of housekeeping. If you would like to support us across our social media platforms, you can do so. We're on Twitter at Damn Podcast. We're also on Facebook and Instagram at Pod of the Damned. You can email us at podofthedamned@gmail.com. And you can subscribe to us on Patreon, patreon.com/Pod of the Damned. I fucked that up, Nico, and I'll bet you didn't. Did you notice?
No.
No, you didn't notice. There's no such thing as Twitter anymore.
Oh, yeah, it's that X thing, is
It's
it?
X. So I keep saying Twitter. People know what I'm talking about. People know. It'll forever be Twitter. You see, in like 5 years' time, we're all going to be like, "What the fuck was Twitter?" There's going to come a point soon where the younger generation's going to be like, "What the fuck was like we were with MySpace and Bebo,
I was just going to say that.
like
Yeah,
MySpace and
Bebo.
Bebo." Now it's going to be Twitter, even though Twitter's still technically a thing. It's just X.
See, Bebo was the best one. I'm surprised that's the one that didn't exist anymore.
Bebo was the best one. I used to love Bebo.
Like, I love the fact that as soon as you open somebody's page, as soon as you clicked on a message or something like that, it played their theme song. So whatever song they picked as their theme song. I loved that.
It's like walk on music, wasn't it?
It was great.
Hello, Newman. Welcome on in. How are you doing today? Welcome on in. Thank you for joining us. Nico, we're going to do this part just before we get into discussion because I get like last week when we did Knock at the Cabin. I don't think I was the only one. I think we were both quite surprised at just like how much conversation that movie actually sparked between us. There was
Yeah.
we got deep like into some really hefty topics that I really wasn't expecting us to actually get into
Same.
when we were talking about that movie. I feel like this movie we're gonna have a lot to talk about, but I feel like we know what we're gonna talk about in this movie. I don't think this movie's gonna throw
Yeah.
up quite the same sort of social commentary, perhaps. Although there might be a couple of little debates here and there. But I want to know your thoughts, your predictions, as always, on where you think The Descent will come on our leaderboard.
See, this is a tricky one because I remember the critics were high on it, and audiences were like, well, blokes were loving this and women hated it for some reason. And I have no clue why back in the day.
Okay.
So it's confusing me because back in the day, most blokes didn't go on the internet, so I think it might score low with like the audience, if you know what I mean.
Uh-huh.
So I'd say probably about See, I want to say an 8, but I think it'll be more of a 7.
You think it'll be a 7? You're going. So what are you going for?
7.
Okay, you're
I'm gonna regret saying that.
okay. You're
I'll
gonna.
split it 7.5.
Okay, so if it scores a 7.5, that would put it currently in 30th place, which is right where Scream is right now.
It's better than Scream.
Okay. Well, early insight into your thoughts there, Nico. Well, we'll find out at the end of the episode. Boomer says in the chat, Pod of the Damned, a podcast that deep dives into the horror of politics. We don't get too involved into politics, right?
When we're doing the podcast on that?
Are we just we could I think we should start a political podcast.
Jesus. Right, come on in. Independence. We'll start at the big
No,
one.
I see. What I think we should do, Nico, is start like a multi-themed podcast, and every week, you know how in this week in this podcast we talk about a different horror movie every week. I think we should start a podcast where every week we do a different podcast. So, like, one week we do, like, a political podcast. Then the next week we do fucking true crime. Then we do, something...
Wrestling.
Then wrestling. Then a sports one. Then something else. And I think we should do that.
I'm game.
I think that'd be fucking ace. Anyways, I need to stop. I've been doing this for years, just randomly being like, I'm going to start another podcast. And I really need to stop. Newman says...
you have 4 at the same time at one point?
I did have 4 going at the same time, yes. I mean, in combining this with some of the streaming work and stuff that I do, I essentially have, 3 right now. So, it's, keeps me busy. Newman says, this week politics, next week chicken.
For it or against it?
I think just chicken or the egg.
Well, what came first?
That's the question, isn't it? I think we could fill a good solid couple of hours on that.
No, really. Dinosaurs is eggs, so eggs came first.
Chickens are kind of like dinosaurs, right?
Well, they're technically descendants.
So birds came first.
Well, sort of.
See? Anyways, right. We're not doing this right now.
obviously the egg came first. Point blank. Like, there wasn't a bird before an egg.
Why not?
Because the bird came out of the egg.
But where did the egg come from?
A dinosaur evolved.
A dinosaur bird, yeah.
No, just a dinosaur.
So the chicken came first.
Well, no, because the dinosaur had no feathers on it.
But just because they're saying chicken doesn't mean it has to be the identical chicken that we know today.
But what I'm saying is, it came from reptiles first.
I feel very much like if someone's listening to this podcast for the first time, they have not came for this. Right.
Scientifically, there was eggs first. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
I mean, I don't agree or disagree with you. I'm just trying to wind you up, to be honest. Boomer just says both are delicious.
I would love to try a dinosaur.
Would you like to taste some dinosaur? Well, I mean, like, you can eat, like, I think I've eaten alligator. That kind of counts, right?
I've eaten alligator too. It's quite nice.
I would assume it would be a bit like that then.
Kangaroo's finer.
Kangaroo is good as well, yeah. Newman says the only way to know is to know who went down on who first. Okay, and on that bombshell, we're going to talk about today's movie. We are talking all about The Descent. This movie was released in 2005, was written and directed by Neil Marshall, and stars Shauna McDonald, Natalie Mendoza, and Alex Reed. The IMDb plot is as follows. A caving expedition goes horribly wrong. I am fucking words up that I would never... Why are you licking your cat?
I'm trying to put you off.
A caving expedition goes horribly wrong as the explorers become trapped and ultimately pursued by a strange breed of predators. So, this is I think this is my choice, right? This is my week. This is my... I can't even remember what my own picks are. This is my pick this week. And this is I picked this movie. This is a movie that I've loved since it came out. I think, and this is a movie that I've rewatched pretty regularly. I would say over the years, I probably have at least rewatched it once a year, if not more, in that time.
I'm guessing you never saw it in the cinema.
I didn't see it in the cinema. No, this came out in
Yeah.
2005. I would have been 13 or 14 at that point.
See, at that time I'd have been sneaking in to see it.
So, well, I never used to sneak into the cinemas. I was a good boy.
She doesn't believe you.
I was a good boy. I literally was having this conversation with Anna the other day. I was like, I was a good boy when I was at school. And then I left school and went to uni and discovered sex, drugs, and alcohol. and everything changed.
Finish at that sex point, everything changes.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm assuming, therefore, then, that you did see this in the cinema.
Yeah. Hence me saying earlier, it was one that when you were coming out, every bloke fucking loved this. Like, every bloke, and there was a lot of women just was like, "That would never happen. No, it would never happen." And you're like, "Oh, all right, fair enough."
Well, I mean, when I was reading, again, as always, I read online, general consensus and opinion. And I have to say, in general, the consensus on this movie is very positive. However, there is that sort of section of people who seem to really dislike this movie for some unknown reason. I don't understand it. And listen, I'm not usually a person who would say this because I don't generally believe in this train of thought. But I genuinely, if you think The Descent is a bad movie, you are wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I hate being that person who says that. I don't generally like to tell people that their other opinion is wrong, but I just don't see how anyone can think this movie's bad. I mean, I'm assuming you're obviously saying there that you think all the men seem to like it. Potentially got something to do with the fact that it's 99% female cast.
See, it's weird because like it's a strong female cast. It's like one that you think females would like. But I remember coming out of the cinema, and honestly, we went to Hero straight after, which was right across from the cinema.
Yeah.
Because it was when I had Miss Cineworld thing. Well, it was Virgin at that point, I think it was. And went in there, and everyone used to talk about films afterwards. You'd chat up dames, wait and nothing you can.
Yeah.
And everyone that I was talking to was like, "It's a brilliant movie." Apart from the females, like the females just didn't like it for some reason, and it's a strong female leads. I was so surprised.
Well, that's the thing as well. Like our main cast here is all female. Obviously, there's the husband at the very beginning, and some of the crawlers are male. But we'll say all female cast just for the purposes of this movie. There is nothing they haven't sexualized the cast in the slightest in this movie. There is absolutely no sort of sexualization of our female characters, which is something that you would generally lead to believe that they would get the sort of female viewer more on board.
Yeah, and that was the weird thing because it was all fucking Spice Girls, girl power, all that fucking shit was on the go at the time, And yeah, this movie is pretty much Spice Girls in a cave if you think about it. You got one that everyone should like. Well, think about it. You've got one that everyone should like. They all fit the bill. They're all sporty.
So when I was reading up about this, people were like, and we'll get on to sort of maybe more concrete comparisons between the two. But people were this is obviously directed by Neil Marshall, who directed another movie that we've covered on the show, a movie that we're very high on as well, Dog Soldiers.
I thought you meant Doomsday.
And we haven't covered that on the show, have we?
I was taking a piss. That'll be the next one.
And there was people drawing comparisons between those movies because Dog Soldiers is largely a male cast. It is kind of the opposite of this movie. Well, it's kind of the same, but in a parallel. It's like almost in a parallel universe, isn't it? It's kind of like this.
It could be the same universe, to be honest.
But you know what I'm saying? Like it's the same but different, if that makes sense.
One they're terrified by werewolves, the other one they're terrified by
cave dwellers.
Basically.
And then one
they're
Nosferatu. And one it's all men and one it's all women. People were drawing the comparisons that in Dog Soldiers, the male cast is generally, we are getting a lovely view of a cat grooming themselves there, which I think, to be honest with you, that might get us some new viewers. So if I say come and look, like I might just advertise this as Red Hot Pussy Show.
Poor Sheila.
And see,
he's not your eye candy.
She's definitely the eye candy of this podcast now. And listen, I think you're not telling me that if I advertised that, we wouldn't get new viewers.
I know that is very true.
So anyway, so people were drawing the comparisons that the male-led dog soldiers, the cast, the characters in there were much better sort of put together. They worked as a team. They made more logical choices. But people were complaining that in this movie, the all-female cast, things went to shit really quickly and that they didn't make logical choices. Now, a couple of things that I want to just sort of throw out there. You have to remember as well, in Dog Soldiers, they are soldiers. So they are specifically trained to work as a team.
And under pressure.
And under pressure. Whereas this is just a group of friends here in The Descent. But also, I mean, maybe it's because I'm looking at it from a male perspective. I don't know. But I don't see, apart from Juno, who we will definitely get into, because
Juno's a cunt.
Apart from Juno, I don't see any decision that any of the characters make that's really, like, super out there to the point where you'd be like, that would never fucking happen.
Yeah, I agree with you, to be honest.
Oh, well.
Because, like, most of them have their heads screwed on and know what they're doing. They're all adrenaline junkies. They're not stupid.
Yeah.
Like, most people say adrenaline junkies are stupid, but no, they're not stupid. These guys know what they're doing. All the girls are basically, they've done this shit before.
They've done this shit before. They know what they're doing, but at the end of the day, they're still just, amateurs doing this. This is their hobby. It's not their profession.
Nah.
Because we get told a couple of them. One of them's a teacher and one of them's a doctor and whatever else. So we get told they don't do this for a living. This is just what they do in their spare time. So they're good at it, but they're not like soldiers who are trained to, obviously not maybe trained to deal with werewolves, but are trained to work in a team in challenging situations under pressure. I just wanted to throw that out there in sort of defense of this movie early doors, because I wanted to sort of, because I've seen some of the criticism out there, and honestly, I am so fucking high on this movie. I'm gonna tell everyone right now, I'm giving this a really fucking high rating at the end, unless Nico somehow manages to talk me down, and I don't think you will, because I think you're probably going to be just as high as me. If maybe
you're hoping.
I'm hoping anyway. Yeah. So, yeah, I just wanted to sort of throw that out there, just to catch up with the chat very quickly. Boomer says he saw this in the cinema. He said it was very, very freaky. And by the way, the book is really, really good. A bit long, but still good. Is there a book of this?
Oh, I didn't know.
I didn't know there was a book of this. So, there you go. Something new. It also has...
Because Boomer seen it in the cinema, right? Boomer, see when you saw it in the cinema, I'm guessing you saw the American version, but see with the bass at the end... Was it just as creepy as the UK version?
Yeah, I was gonna bring on to obviously that he also says that it has a Real Housewives subplot going on, which it does, which we'll talk about as well. But we'll get on to the ending, because I'm assuming you've watched the UK ending, which is the not so good end, the bad ending, shall we say? Not bad as in technically bad, the bad as in it's just a sad ending.
I thought the US one was a sad one as well.
In the US one, she escapes.
Oh, does she? I thought in the US one, it dragged her back with a kid.
No, that's the UK one. That's the UK ending.
Oh, okay. I just thought the UK one was she wakes up and you see her. I thought that was the difference. The last scene where you see her still in the cave.
Yeah, so no. So the last scene's still in the cave. She believes she's there with her child, the birthday cake, which is the visions she's having throughout the movie. And then obviously it zooms out and you see that she's just there with her torch, and the cave dwellers are circling in on her, and that's the end. Yeah. Very, very bleak ending. That ending is kind of completely blown out the water by the sequel. Which...
Still not seen it yet, but I'm gonna.
Okay, do you want my brief opinion on it?
No, I'll watch it and then you can tell.
Okay.
We can cover it if it's that shit.
It's all I'll say is it's not as good as this one, but I think that would have been a hard task anyway. And like I say, in the US version, she escapes at the end, and I think that makes a big I think it really does make a big difference on how I would feel about this movie. I think if I'd watched this for the first time and she'd escape, I don't think I'd be as high on this movie as I am. I like the bleak ending of this.
See, in the cinema, like, you sort of knew it was coming. You had an inkling it was coming, you know?
Yeah.
And when they fed through the fucking bass, it was just that, oh, like that is, it zooms out.
Yeah.
So it was even more atmospheric. It was like really, really creepy because as it was zooming out, you heard like a bassy tone, and it was just like it was so cool. It was like one of the coolest endings. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because it was just the zoom out sort of thing, and they're like, it just was really, really smart, to be honest.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think leaving I think sometimes people are just too focused on making sure that people leave the cinema feeling good. And I think
Uh,
let's let your audience leave that cinema after watching this harrowing film, and we'll get into, what actually goes on in the content in this film relatively shortly. But you go through this film, there's that it's so bleak throughout, and then it's just like a fucking gut punch right at the end there, isn't it? Like, we've just been through all this. She's had to not only try and survive and kill her friends, but even after all that, she doesn't even make it out herself. And it's just fucking horrendous.
so come on, in, which one did you fancy?
why have you got to turn it sexual, Nico?
Am I wrong? Was there one that you fancied?
I'm not answering that question.
Well, it's a genuine because we debated this as well. Who was the hottest one in it?
Oh, who do you think it is?
Well, I think it is Beth.
Oh, see, I thought it was Beth as well. I really didn't think we'd pick the same one there, to be honest. I really, really didn't.
That's exactly my type. A thick accent, fucking dark hair.
Anyways, Boomer says there is a book. I'd be interested to read the book, actually. He said, although you did say it was a bit overlong, but it's still good. I'd be really interested in actually checking that out, because I wasn't aware there was a book of this movie at all.
I didn't know that either.
He said, we couldn't handle the sadness over here, which may be true. I do kind of prefer her triumphing after such an ordeal. So Boomer, and I usually prefer a bleak ending, Boomer says. So Boomer actually says that he in general prefers a bleak ending, but to this movie he actually preferred the happier ending. Kate Lamp in the chat, also welcome in, thank you very much for the follow, long time follower of the podcast, thank you very much. Also says, I prefer her escaping, it was already bleak enough. So people in the chat there are saying that they prefer the happier ending, but again, is it a case of the sadder ending maybe just doesn't translate well to a North American audience?
That's maybe what was making folk pissed off over here, if you think about it.
Could be.
Because
I never remember.
Honestly,
I never remember seeing. I didn't see the happy ending till much, much later. Every single time I watched
I'll
it.
not see the happy ending.
Have you still not seen it? So there you go. So that's like, it's just not shown over here. It's not on. I mean, I'm assuming it's on. I have the DVD of it. It might be on like the bonus features, maybe on the DVD. You can look it up online. You'll find it online. But whenever it's broadcast, if it's broadcast, the US ending is just never shown. The theater. It's always the UK ending.
Yeah.
For us, anyway. Again, I'm assuming if it's ever shown in the States, it's shown with the US ending.
Would guess though, yeah.
Yeah. Boomer also says, by the way, speaking of decisions, how great would anyone's decisions be lost and chased by monsters? Exactly. So we're talking about the decision making earlier of the female cast. They're in, and this is what I want to talk about the movie, because this is one of the things I think makes this movie so great, right? This movie has 3 villains. 3 different villains. It has the monsters, which is like your really conventional villain.
Yeah.
There's people out there with the train of thought that they don't even need the monsters because the caves and the claustrophobia counts as a villain, and that is scary enough.
Okay, and Juno. Okay, I'll go.
And each other. I've just put down each other as the 3rd villain, but
Juno's the cut. Like, nobody else is fucking killing everybody else.
Really. Well, here we go, because there's a school of thought out there amongst the horror fandom that in actual fact, and I want to get your thoughts on this, there is no cave dwellers. They are a figment of Sarah's imagination, and she's just like straws broken the camel back. She's just flipped, and she's killing her friends.
Mm, nah, I'd prefer the actual.
I mean, you prefer it, but that's a reasonable train of thought.
But if you think about it, how does that explain Juno killing Beth?
Well, I mean, because Sarah's attacking. The Juno still would kill Beth in that scenario because she thinks someone's like the. Let's like just for a moment in defense of Juno, right? I don't really want to defend
No.
Juno too much.
No.
She didn't mean to kill Beth.
True, but then
Killing Beth wasn't
of it being monsters.
Killing Beth was no, because she could just think that it was Sarah. No, but that's the thing. They're not seeing the monsters; they're seeing Sarah.
But that's the thing. There's three of them getting attacked at once. Sarah can't be in three places at once.
But who's to say that's all happening at the exact same time?
Well, yeah, it is all happening at the same time. They're like one gets pulled away from the other one and all that shit.
By Sarah.
The first time that the monsters attack, it is like three of them doing.
Listen, I'm not sitting here saying that it's the right train of thought. It's just something that I thought was an interesting one to throw out there. I think
it's an interesting one, but I do not think it is right in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
It might be in the books, but it's definitely not here.
I don't know if it's in the book. So another train of thought that as I just mentioned earlier, that people had as well was that this movie actually doesn't need the monsters at all. And then a lot of people, they have criticized the movie, they've praised it up until the point where the monsters actually are introduced. They think it's a perfectly fine horror movie without them, and they actually say that I've actually seen people write and read that's ruined the movie.
See, I like movies where it builds up and there's more than one thing threatening, and I think the monsters make it scarier, make it more seem like that whatever it is getting them, the monsters themselves, it adds that extra layer that you need.
For me, it's a case of like, I think, right, and I think we mentioned it in one of our slightly more recent episodes about movies that are just this expert at building tension and being really claustrophobic. And I think it was someone in our chat that posted The Descent. It might have been Boomer actually. That posted The Descent was a really good example of a movie that does that. And I think this movie does that so well because you have like this movie's about what, an hour and 40 minutes long. And the pacing of this movie is actually batshit crazy. Like when you sit there and you look at it and you sort of break it down, you would actually sit there and think the pacing of this movie is fucking all over the place, right? But
yeah,
it's such a good so it's 23 minutes into this movie before they even reach the cave. So we've got 23 full minutes of sort of world building, story building. Of all that sort of things, backgrounds to the character, which for some people is way too long. Some people, but there's just something quite engaging about it. You get a couple of early jump scares in there with the crash and Sarah's dream when the metal pipes come through the window. So there's enough there to sort of keep you engaged, right? Yeah. And then it's 11 minutes after that we get the cave in, which we'll talk about that scene, because I think for most people that's the scene of this movie that's like the one that freaks them out. So it's quite a short time. But then it's another almost 20 minutes after that before we even see the monster, when Sarah gets that first glimpse of the monster, with it being a further 5 minutes after that, we get that first scare. But once we get that first jump scare, the night vision scene with the monster, this film is 1,000 miles an hour.
Yeah. And then it sort of chills for a little bit, like just for a touch, when they're like fucking, what is it they're doing again? It's a bit where she's like lying down with her or not. You know, they're in the cave hiding.
Yeah.
And it sort of settles you a little bit just to bring your heart rate down to fucking boost it up again.
Yeah, but it just
I quite like.
and it just keeps going. I genuinely think the pacing of this movie is
For their eating. You know the bit for their eating?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just it, like you say, if you was to write that down on paper, like I have, like when your sort of key moments happen that sort of change things, you would sit there and think the pacing of this movie is really bizarre. It's not really cut into defined act. Everything's sort of a 3-act movie. This doesn't feel like it's sort of cut into defined acts. I mean,
Yeah.
even if it
I think
does,
that works in its favour, though.
but even if it does, the acts are really imbalanced. You could say, first act is before they reach the cave, second act is when they're in the cave but they haven't found the monsters, and then third act everything after that. But then that would make your third act almost an hour long, and it just it's very weird. But it's something that I think works incredibly well. The tension, that first 20 minutes, even though after the car crash happens, there's no danger to any of our characters in that 20 minutes, there's still this really sort of uneasy sense you get. You can feel the tension between the characters. We already have worked out at this point that Juno was having an affair with Sarah's husband. So we really hate on that character. But in all of that sort of group, the group sort of scenes, that you can feel the dynamic in them is really sort of frosty, and can't you?
Like, it's like they're trying to help Sarah, but at the same time they're scared of her.
I don't even think it's they're scared. I wouldn't even say it's they're scared of her. I think they're scared of what they're just walking on eggshells around her, aren't they?
Yeah.
She's
scared of what could happen. Yeah.
She's gone through this terrible loss, although the loss of her husband might not have been so terrible because he was, a piece of shit. But the loss of her child is definitely something that's really horrific. And there's a scene later on that just really makes me hate Juno even more, where she's like, "Oh, we all lost something in that crash," and it's like, "Bitch, you were the other woman." Like,
yeah.
That really was like the nail in the coffin to me for her character. And they almost tried to give her like this redemption arc where she was like, "I'm not leaving without Sarah." She went back for her to try and save her. And I'm really fucking happy that Sarah was just like, "No, fuck you for everything that you've done." Because not only did she did she have an affair with her husband, she also lied to them about the caves. She killed Beth. Even though it was an accidental kill, like she is, and she just seems, every group, right? Every big friendship group has the person who thinks they're in charge.
Has the selfish person, basically, and Juno is the most selfish one in the group.
But
that's the thing about it.
But like ramped up to 11 as well. Like she is, I could not be friends with her.
But I guarantee you are friends with somebody that is similar to that.
Oh, well, I have been friends with people who are similar than that. But we try and eliminate these people from our lives. Okay, just catching up on the chat again. Boomer says Juno is the cutest, but she'd probably Black Widow me. He says.
Likes a bit of a bad girl, do you, Boomer?
Don't we all? He also says he thinks it's an interesting point that Sarah maybe potentially already knew about the cave, planted monster costumes, and then played dress up as a gremlin to kill people. I'm sure that definitely happened.
Yeah, totally.
And Kate Lamp says, I think... Sorry.
There's... Back to the thing, I was thinking about it, right? The bit where it's all on camera, the monster's eating, wouldn't make sense if she was the killer.
Listen, you can say there's obviously parts in it that disprove the theory.
Just because I was thinking about it just now, and it just came.
I think it would.
That's the scene that definitely disproves it.
I think it would be an interesting theory, though. Like, she's finally snapped. Like, she's been through this huge ordeal, and now she's stuck in everything up until the point where the cave-in actually happens. That all happens as we see it on camera, but that's what's caused her to finally fucking snap, and it's all Juno's fucking doing.
Yeah. Because I was the only thing, because I was sitting here when you were speaking, that made me realise that, that doesn't hold up for me, that theory, put it that way.
Yeah. Anyways, Kate Lamb says, I think it portrayed the female friend group dynamics pretty well. A lot of the time there are so many little conflicts or dramas going on under the surface. And I think that's a really good point, because we've obviously talked about the conflict that would be going on between Sarah and Juno. But you can also see
Yeah.
like there's the like Beth also clearly has a very sort of frosty relationship with Juno. I don't know if she's maybe just like taking Sarah's side in the whole sort of thing, which she'd be absolutely right to do because, you know, Sarah's not done anything wrong. But you also have that sort of sibling rivalry that's going on. There's the two sisters and they're sort of bickering back and forth as well. And then you also have like the newbie introduced to the group because we've got Holly, who obviously is Juno's friend. They call her a protege, and I'm not sure if that's meant to be like a euphemism for girlfriend.
Yeah.
But there's this sort of new person introduced to the group, and everyone's a little bit like sort of like not suspicious, but just a bit wary of her.
Yeah. But it's like I like being friends with girls a lot. And through my life, I've always hung around with girls a lot more than I really should have, right? And even just as friends, by the way. And the girl dynamic in it is very, very similar to what I've seen in a lot of girl groups.
Yeah.
Like, really, really badly. You always get the one it's like the best friend dynamic. So it's like, you might be my best friend, but I'm technically not your best friend. It would be whoever
definitely not.
Somebody else. No, but I'm using that as an example, yeah.
Okay.
So it'd be like, say if we were working at Tropball together, Sing City, right? So say you were my best workmate there.
Mm-hmm.
Jack would have been your best workmate. I might have been his best workmate. You know, it's
okay.
That whole thing.
Really well done on giving an example that our listeners can get on board with.
I was trying to think of one, but
Right. Okay, Nico, are you claustrophobic?
No.
No? How do you feel? Because
No.
every single time we cover a movie about monsters and, you know, what would you do in this situation, you always come out with a very sort of cavalier, I'd
never got in the fucking
I'd
cave.
fucking kick the shit out of everyone kind of attitude. You'd never go you'd never go
I
in.
wouldn't be running for them. I wouldn't be running for him, but I'm too fat to get in them caves. See, if it was back when I was skinny, I would have done it. But no danger. I'm not flexible enough.
Let's just.
I'm too fat.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit. I'm about the same as you, to be honest. But let's just say these are caves that are designed for, you know, the non-slim, you know, middle 20s-year-old woman, and that sort of closer to middle-aged, chubbier men like us can actually get down them.
I was in my mid-20s, when I was skinnier and I was actually flexible, I'd have been straight to that caves. I ain't no problem.
Listen, I've done, you know, rock climbing, abseiling, all these sorts of things. I've done my fair share of like whitewater rafting and sort of gorge walking and all these sorts of things. I've done my fair share of all this stuff before in my life. I would not go caving.
Why?
No, that's just a step too far for me. And I'm not someone who is particularly claustrophobic. I just no, I maybe it's movies like this. I just know there's something about it that doesn't really appeal to me at all.
There was, when I was in Czech, there was a cave thing you went in, and it gets smaller as you go in, and basically the cave, it goes like this, it goes like that, and then it veers off one side.
Uh-huh.
So if you come in from one direction, you can get lost going into like a dead end, and the other side goes straight past that opening, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So it curves round, so it's basically a curve like that. So I went in that pitch black, no torch, no nothing. Like nothing. And I fucking loved it. I put my hand against the wall at one point and I could feel water coming through.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant. I loved that.
Well, good for you, but no, it's just not for me. It just doesn't appeal for me. And then we have the scene. There's maybe like sort of two scenes I think that really sort of stick out in this one has been memorable. And the first one is the cave-in scene where she gets stuck in the tunnel. And I think even for people who aren't claustrophobic, that's kind of like a worst nightmare scenario, isn't it?
Oh yeah, but the bit where it's leave the fucking rope, I love that. You know.
Yeah, like fuck this shit. Well, they have to, don't they? Otherwise, they're gonna.
It's like get the rope. You fucking come on. We might need it. Leave the fucking rope. Let's go.
Yep. It's just, I think there's something sort of very like almost there's something really simple about what this movie's done, isn't it? And that is
Yeah.
like that idea that you've gone caving, which that idea alone is terrifying enough for a lot of people. But the idea
Yeah.
that then you would get stuck is something I think that would scare 99.9% people on this planet. Like if you were in that
See.
situation and you were stuck, you'd be fucking terrified. And there's
Oh
something
yeah,
that
totally.
this movie just plays on that so well. It just really taps into that really basic fear that it's almost universal.
It taps into that whole buried alive thing as well, because
Mm-hmm.
every human being's got that in them that they don't want to be buried alive.
Yeah.
So it taps into that as well. But do you know what scene I quite like in this? And it's such a simple scene, but it like it makes you think about it.
Yeah.
It's that bit where they find the extra crampon when they're going across the roof,
Yeah. That's the other
and
scene that I was going to bring up.
the old ones there. I
Yeah.
love that bit because like they're like, oh, this is somewhere nobody's ever been. Straight away, it fucking says that yes, somebody's been in here, and they didn't make it out, so something's got them. That's
Yeah.
the bit when I like, that there's monsters there.
But yeah,
There's something killing them.
it doesn't even necessarily have to mean that there's monsters there, though, as well. You could just assume, yes, there's been people here before, but they just didn't find the other exit. There isn't another exit. So you could either make the assumption, like, there's two ways you can go with that. You could go to the assumption that there's something else in this cave that's killed these previous people, and they're going to come for this group as well. Or
Yeah,
you could say, right, we're going to follow these people, but we're just following these people to their deaths because there's no other way out. And there's something quite grim, and it goes back to that really sort of bleakness that we were talking about with the
uh,
endings. There's something quite bleak about that as well that I really like.
but that's the thing about it as well, right? It's you're you technically wouldn't be following them to their death. Yes, you are, but they had a way out. The cave-in didn't happen for them,
Yeah. Well,
so it
yeah.
means something got them in the cave.
Yeah, that's a good point. No, that's a very good point.
So that's why I like that bit, because it's just that moment where it's like someone's got to get these fuckers.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a very good point. But I think what as well is if you've gone into this movie blind, then
You're a monster.
thanks. If you've gone into this movie
Because the monsters are blind.
I think if you've gone into this movie blind and you get to that point where they're hanging off the roof and they're traveling across this sort of crevasse, whatever it is you want to call it, um, you really must be thinking like, what the fuck's going on at this point, right? What's gonna like? I would just like to know. I can't remember thinking what I thought when I first saw this movie. It was too long ago. I would really like to know what the thought process that would go through for people at that point when they were watching this for the first time.
See, I actually wasn't going to go see this the first time I watched it.
Mm-hmm.
I only went because I can't even remember if it was darts or football. I used to do heaps of stuff back then. Something wasn't on. Something had been cancelled. A
Yeah.
game had been cancelled. Because so I ended up going with my mates to watch this, and there was about 8 or 9 of us going because we all had that cinema passes,
Yeah.
and we used to go there before we went out drinking. So you'd finish early on a Friday, and you'd go watch something like this, and then you go drinking. So you had a talking point with everyone.
Yeah.
It was quite a good way of doing it, and including new folk in the group as well.
Yeah.
So this is one of those ones where I only knew about 3 or 4 of the guys there. I didn't know everyone,
Mm-hmm.
and there was not one person in our group that didn't like this film.
Yeah.
Like every single, they were all blokes ranging from their 18 to about 30 odd. So it was a mixture of folk. So it's one of those. This is a movie that taps into no matter what age you were, it tapped into some sort of fear you had, whether it was the monsters, whether it was the cave, whether it was the claustrophobia with the cave and all that,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was the fucking anything in it. Like so much stuff in it got different folk for different reasons.
Yeah.
And I like that about this movie.
Yeah. Definitely. Let's catch up with the chat again. Boomer says he wouldn't go down there either. I remember the story of a kid who went exploring in a cave and got stuck. Rescue crews couldn't get him, so he just died that way, stuck in a cave in the dark. Nope. He says, I say kid because I'm 40. It's fine. Nico's 42. Um,
Yeah.
And Kate Lamb says, any claustrophobia I have is specific to caves thanks to this movie. So literally I feel like this movie does have that. You know how like no one wants to drive behind a lorry that's carrying logs.
See, I've seen it and I'd still do it.
No, but yeah, okay, you would. I think in future you're just exempt from these examples because the majority of it's a thing. I'm just talking about it being a thing, Nico.
Well, I have mild psychopathic tendencies.
Mild.
I was mild, yeah.
Okay.
So like,
but you know how there's that thing where people
in my mind,
there's that thing where people won't drive behind a logging truck because of Final Destination 2. People won't go in the water.
Folk won't go in sunbeds because of Final Destination as well.
Yeah, exactly. People won't go in the water after dark because of fucking Jaws or, you know, whatever else. Yeah. This movie has that effect for caves.
Yeah. Like, there was only once that I actually proper had a flashback to a movie, and funnily enough, it was Jaws.
Was it?
Yeah. We went camping.
Yeah.
I think it was Bealdside or somewhere. It was off one of the rivers in Aberdeen anyway.
Yeah.
And we were right next to the river we were camping. And it was skinny dipping time, you know, if it like it is.
Of course it was.
We'd all been drinking, right? We'd all been drinking. And everyone was back on shore, and I was swimming. I was the last one coming in, because me being me, I went over to the other side of the river.
Yeah.
And as I was going across, something hit my foot, came round and hit my other foot as I was swimming. And I'm not joking. I was in the water going, fuck. And like, because I was slightly drunk, you know. I'm thinking in the river fucking D or Dawn that there's a fucking shark away to eat me, you know what I mean?
You were drunk.
I was very drunk. Like about 3 strokes further, I could probably stand up, you know what I mean?
Are we still talking about you being in the water? 3 strokes and he's done. Anyways, Boomer says he refuses to feed his pets after midnight, for an example.
Is that in case furry things like this turn into gremlins?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he's talking about. Anyways, I've still got another few points that I would like to discuss. One of the things, like, we says we're only going to get too deep with some of our conversations, but there is sort of symbolic nature in quite a lot of what happens in this movie. You know,
yeah.
That scene at the end where she thinks she's found the exit and she's running up the path. There is sort of a sense of, you know, that being symbolic of her rebirth.
Yeah.
As this other person. So I think... Sorry. Oh, I thought you were going to interrupt me with a point. You know, and that's just one example. There's quite a few different examples of stuff like that happening throughout the movie. And I think that's something that it actually does quite well.
But see that bit that you just talked about? As soon as you see her crawling up that perfect angle,
you know it's a fucking dream.
Exactly, because there's no danger that nobody had discovered that cave system if that was there.
Yeah, no, there is. I can't remember if I thought it first time I saw it, but I remember on subsequent watches being like, oh yeah, that's definitely, like, she's dreaming now. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's something that Boomer or Kate in the chat could answer for us when they first watched it. Is that something that, you know, did they assume, like, did they get that feeling even though that's not how their ending goes?
Like, I still remember what I said when I saw that bit.
Yeah.
I leaned over at one of the guys I knew and I says, Bruce. He's like, fit. I'm like, she's slowly bleeding out, falling asleep. That's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
I was wrong, but that's what I thought it was.
But you were close enough.
And he's like, I think you're right. And he got excited thinking it was so cool that this was a bit they were going to end it on, you know? Because that's what I thought it was. I thought she was just slowly bleeding out, sitting in a cave dying.
Yeah. Which is close enough, though, to what we actually got. You know, it's not that million miles away, is it? But yeah. I do like some of the foreshadowing that happens as well, because there's that moment during the cave-in scene where Beth goes back for her, and she tells her, this is the worst thing that could have happened to you has already happened. And you're just like,
yeah,
no, it's not.
Exactly. Just wait, bitch.
So I like moments like that you maybe don't get on the straight away. Boomer says, yeah, immediately knew that wasn't real. But it was real in your version, right? It was real in the American version because she escapes. I can't remember. Is that still a dream, and does she escape in a different way? Or I can't. You've not seen that ending. I can't remember. I've only seen it once or twice.
No.
Um,
One of my mates, he told me, he obviously got it wrong, but he said the American version was when she escapes, she gets out, and then it just cuts to her sitting with her daughter, and then that's the end.
I can't.
Now, unless he just watched a pirated version of this, and,
Yeah, possibly.
it stopped early.
We at Pod of the Damned do not condone pirating of movies, of course.
Obviously. But back in the day, it was everywhere, and it was the only way you could get films at the same time as the US.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, right.
We were normally about 3 months later, that's why.
It was about 3 months, yeah. Is there any point in this movie where you feel bad for Juno?
The only bit that I feel bad for her is when I started laughing because she got killed. I'm laughing at that bit where she gets hit. Everybody else in the cinema was like, oh, I'm like, that's probably not the best type of laugh, you know? Like, it genuinely wasn't the best type of laugh. Like, everyone looking at you like you're basically a psycho. And I'm like, yeah, I better keep my head down a bit.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, I just want to throw it out there because there is again a train of thought that has some sort of sympathy for Juno as the movie goes on, but I just don't, because, you know, every step of the way she chooses like the really selfish, pick me, cunty option, doesn't she?
Yeah, like I decided to pick this caves and not tell you because I want to be the one to discover it with you guys.
There's also in that opening scene, it's so blatant that they're having an affair.
Yeah, they're pumping, aye.
Like, it's not like you'd think you would try and hide that like much better than they're doing.
I've got no comment on that sort of scenario.
No, but you know what I'm saying. Like, it is so fucking blatant, isn't it? It's really fucking obvious that them two are having an affair.
But sometimes it's so obvious.
But not to the
That's
person.
the thing that
not
hides
to
the fact.
But not to the people who are involved.
Exactly.
Yeah, sometimes it's easier to see from the outside than the inside. It's a good point. Just a couple of other points that I want to bring up then, before I'll let you have the floor and then we can move on. I really want to point out the overall sort of acting in this movie, specifically from our main character, Shauna McDonald, who plays Sarah. I think she does really fucking good job in this movie. That scene where she sort of wakes up in the hospital and the heart breaks, where she sort of figured out that her family is dead. You know, that's another really sort of bleak, harrowing scene, and she performs that really well. You know, we've praised people like Toni Collette for that kind of scene in you know, things like Hereditary recently, but I think Shauna McDonald does a really good job of it here as well. There's a slightly continuity thing that bothered me in this movie. So, going back to the scene where they're hanging from the roof over the gap. What do you actually call that? What's the word for that section? Like, what would you call that?
I'd say a crevasse.
Yeah, so I was right. Yeah, that's fine.
Fill it with your mighty juice.
I will. Good little tenacious D reference there. Nice.
With your mighty juice.
Maybe I should Dream Warriors Tenacious D into this and just start every so often playing some Tenacious D.
Anytime crevasse is said.
Just anything. Just, you know, any single word that's ever used in a Tenacious D song.
That would be a wonder boy.
Yeah. No way. Hey. Okay. Anyways.
So which one was it you said that you fancied again?
The bloke at the start. No.
Who was it again?
Beth.
Oh, would you fuck her gently?
Oh, for fuck's sake. Aye, good. Okay. Right. So when the moment, anyways, my point.
Do you like kielbasa?
No, shut the fuck up. My point, right? They make it to the crevasse.
You okay there?
They make it to the crevasse, right? And in that initial scene, they drop the rock off the side to see how deep it goes, and you hear the rock clattering off the rocks at the bottom. But later on, when Juno jumps, it's like there's water at the bottom.
Is there?
She lands in water.
Oh yeah, so she does. I forgot about that.
That bit's that's always bothered me.
See, maybe they just hit the rock side at the side, so it's like don't.
Yeah, but you would have still heard this. You'd have still heard the splash.
No, really, because it would have bounced off the rock and went bloop.
No, I'm refusing to accept that. Just like you refuse to accept that it was actually Sarah that killed everyone, I'm refusing to accept that. I think that's just.
That's because it wasn't Sarah that killed everyone.
That's because there was no water at the bottom. See, you didn't fucking like it, do you?
But here's the thing: it might have been filling up because remember the rock slide altered the cave structure, so it might have been filling up as they were dealing with everything else.
No, there was.
You don't know how much water.
No, because I'm also refusing to accept that because I would have accepted that if there was some signs that there was water coming through there in the initial scene, but there wasn't any.
Well, that's what would have caused the cave-in. Everyone knows that cave-ins like that happen through two ways.
But the cave-in happened before that
or
scene.
Earthquake. Oh no, but what I'm saying
so
is,
we would already have known.
Well, it depends how fast the water's pouring in, does it?
But it wasn't pouring in. That's the point.
But you don't know if it was. That's the point.
No, we know. We see it wasn't.
How? The two things that would have caused the cave-in is water subsiding or an earthquake. Was there a tremor?
Well, yeah,
there was no tremors.
There was literally a tremor right before the cave-in happened.
No, that was just the water rushing through the building.
The building. Can't fit, Nico. You're full of shit.
I reckon it would have been water filling up.
No,
I just.
Anyways, right. Let's just catch up on the chat before we make our sort of final points. Boomer says, it's been a while since I've seen this, but I thought there was a part where she thinks she got out, but she doesn't, and then after some slight issues, she eventually does. See, I think that's what the American version at the end is. I think the dream sequence still happens, but I think once she wakes up, she then just gets out. I think.
Aye, because is it not like she makes it to... Is it near like a van or something?
Yeah. I'm sure that's right. I think that's right. But Boomer also says maybe I'm putting the two versions together in his head. K-Lam says she never felt bad for Juno. She's the reason they were there. Nope, absolutely fine. Totally get that. I think we can both get on board with that. But she also said maybe it rained when they were deep down. They're too
there's the water. There's the water.
Oh, you just think there's a bit of fucking drizzle?
It's opened up the lake that's above them because they drive past it twice.
Okay, whatever.
You go.
I'm still disagreeing with you. Anyways, my final question for you, Nico. Given that this is the second Neil Marshall movie that we've covered and we love both of them, The Descent or Dog Soldiers, if you had to pick one.
Doomsday.
That wasn't in the question, was it?
Well, I'm going option 3.
It's a poor show, Nico. Right, any other issues, praise, any other points that you'd like to bring up about this movie before we move on?
We're doing Doomsday next.
We're not. Because the next like 4 months worth of movies have been set.
Okay, but we'll both be doing Doomsday.
Oh, okay. Shall we move on then?
Okay.
Okay.
And Beth Hop. Talking to the logs.
I guess we're not moving on. No. Okay.
You know how you said about the logs thing? That I meant to say it because I was letting you finish your point, but I meant to say it. Do you not think that was like a fucking subtle hint to Final Destination?
Yeah, definitely.
The motor.
Yeah, it absolutely was. When did Final Destination 2 actually come out, though? Was that maybe like a year or two before this? Because this came out in 2005. That would have been about Final Destination time, right? Yeah. Final Destination 2 came out in 2003, so this is 2 years after it. So, yeah, I think that was definitely maybe a wee wink to Final Destination 2 there. Boomer, by the way, says Dog Soldiers. Prefers Dog Soldiers.
Oh yeah, 100%. Dog Soldier's the best out of 3, but yeah. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I would take the piss with Doomsday. Doomsday's the worst one. I forgot to correct myself there, sorry, I just realised.
Did you? Aye. Okay, right, we're moving on. I don't even give a fuck anymore. Right, let's talk about some trivia.
I messaged a mate and he says the ending on the US one is where the girl is in the motor. You just see a glimpse of her in the motor and then it stops there.
Right, okay. Fair
So
enough.
that's still a bleak fucking ending in the
Yeah.
US, is it not?
Probably quite surprisingly, there's actually quite a lot of trivia for this movie.
Good.
British movies tend to not have a huge amount of trivia on the interwebs. We'll start off as we do with the finances. This movie, according to IMDb, had a budget of £3.5 million, which I would believe would be in the region of what, about $5 million? Just under four and a half.
Nowadays.
4.5 maybe.
Well, back then you would have got about 2.5, so it would have been fucking double that.
Yeah. Anywho,
So it would have been a big budget for back then.
£3.5 million. It grossed
So you're talking about 8.
It grossed
US.
It grossed worldwide. You do that every fucking week.
You okay, mate?
No. You grossed worldwide $57.1 million. So it's safe to say that this was a pretty big success financially of a movie, which, I don't know, is that a surprise?
No.
You sure? I don't know, like, I feel like that's just a surprise that this movie did so well. Like, even though it's so good and we're full of praise for it, feels like the kind of movie that just wouldn't do well at the box office.
See, back then...
2005, remember? Horror wasn't in a great place.
Yeah, but everyone, if a critic said it was good, that was printing money.
Yeah.
Folk did used to go see it, whether it was good or not.
That's true.
Where they made their serious coin was the aftermath, and I know for a fact this movie, the critics were daft on it.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved this.
Yeah, fair enough. It's funny, you mentioned the movie Dracula earlier, didn't you?
No, I said Nosferatu.
Yeah, so the crawlers were designed to resemble Nosferatu from the
You
original,
can tell that
the original 1922 film. They also had huge white eyes to begin with, but that idea was done away with because it looked too silly, and it took 3.5 hours to in makeup to transform an actor into one of the crawlers, and they had to shave off all their body hair. So yeah, it was specifically designed on Nosferatu.
Yeah, you could blatantly tell that.
Yeah.
Plus, I like the way they look slightly gloopy. You know, like
Yeah.
they've got like fucking something on them.
Yeah,
I like that.
It's just, I think it's just supposed to be like a layer of like filth and dirt, and you know their skin will have toughened and over the evolution, and yeah, they look. I think they look fucking cool. I've seen a lot.
Too.
I've seen a lot of discourse saying that they look goofy as shit. I don't think they look goofy. I think they look pretty fucking cool.
They look slimy and creepy, and I like that.
Yeah. The filmmakers considered it too dangerous to film in an actual cave, and it would have been far too time consuming, so they just built the caves instead. So all the cave scenes are just built on set. The external scenes were all filmed in the UK, but the cave scenes were all on a set. I think it was in Pinewood Studios that they
Was it not like 20 different caves they made?
I think they only made one cave, but they made it like 20 different ways for the one cave, if that makes sense.
I think they basically wheeled them in and out of the studio, was it not? They made different ones that they could alter it into like 20 different versions.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Which is quite cool, I think.
The appearance of the creatures was kept a secret from the cast members until the first scene in which the encounter was filmed, and the cast were finally filming the scene where the girls encountered the crawlers. They were genuinely scared and screamed the building down, running off set and laughing. We've spoken before.
I knew that, but...
We've spoken before about directors who do this, and I'm not a huge fan of directors actually scaring their cast.
Aye, but this one, it wasn't like they were fucking not knowing it wasn't coming. They read the script, they just didn't know what it would look like.
Yeah, it's not like the chest bursting scene where no one told them what was actually happening.
Yeah.
Boomer says you'd think they'd have more hair to stay warm, and also like little Nikos running around. That is a terrifying thought. Never bring that up again.
See, if you were a cave dweller like that, then yeah, you would have no hair. You would be blind.
Yeah.
Your other senses would be heightened. evolution-wise would do that, because you wouldn't want hair catching on stuff.
No, I think that their skin will have toughened enough to the point where it probably retains heat as well.
Maybe. But the thing is, the caves would funnel in the heat and
Yeah.
the cool.
Yeah.
So they'd be pretty much a constant temperature. You'd just be used to that temperature.
They'd be completely desensitized to it, wouldn't they?
Yeah, like being on the surface would hurt them more, being
Yeah.
cold or hot, because they'd be a steady temperature.
Yeah. Production on this film was fast-tracked, so the movie could be released before the similarly themed American film The Cave, which I can't help but notice is we're not talking about The Cave, we're talking about The Descent, so that maybe suggests which movie did a better job. Unfortunately, it opened the same week as the 2005 London bombings, which considerably hurt the film's chances at the box office. So there's even another reason, like, we're already saying that the film did really, really well at the box office, but they're actually saying that the box office was probably hurt. It could have been even bigger if it wasn't for the fact that it got released the same week as the London bombings.
Yeah.
Which is a good point. So, the jokey production name given to this film during production was Chicks with Pecs.
That's even lowbrow for me.
Away you go. The lowest brow person I fucking know.
Nah, even Shira's disgusted by that, are you, Shira?
No, she looks it. Oh,
Yeah,
she's
away.
leaving. She's leaving.
Oh, it's like the perfect timing ever.
Nice. Shauna McDonald, who plays our lead character Sarah, is actually claustrophobic.
So it probably she loved this, huh?
She found it easy to act scared and panicky while underground.
I wonder why.
The director of this movie, Neil Marshall, who we've briefly discussed, initially wanted to pass on the project, having just done another horror movie with Dog Soldiers 3 years earlier. He later reconsidered since both movies were nothing alike, even though, in actual fact, the movies are a lot alike.
Yeah, but
I get that the concept of the movies are very different, but they're very, very similar, aren't they? That's what we were saying at the beginning. They're different but the same. You know, it's weird. He decided to cast an all-female group with protagonists in contrast to the normally male-dominated horror genre. He consulted with his female friends to avoid cliches and define their personalities, and he chose actresses with a wide array of accents to give the film a more cosmopolitan feel. There's people out there saying, like, oh, this guy has obviously never spoken... I saw the criticisms, this guy's never spoken to a woman before in his life, but he got his, like, female friends to help write the script, so...
And I used to hang about with females a lot, and they are very similar to female groups. Like,
yeah. Every actress in this... I don't know why I said actress so funnily there, I said that weird. Every actress in the group is from a different country. Shauna McDonald, who plays Sarah, was raised in Scotland, so obviously she has a nice Scottish accent, but she was born in Malaysia. Natalie Mendoza, who plays Juno, is from Hong Kong. Alex Reed, who plays Beth, was born in England. Saskia Mulder, who plays Rebecca, is from the Netherlands. Mayana Burning who plays Sam, comes from Sweden. And Nora Jane Mnoon, who plays Holly, obviously comes from Ireland. So from all over the globe.
Is it not like... I might be wrong, but is Alex Reed and like fake Cornwall, so she's really hiding her accent, if that's the case?
Oh, I didn't read too much more into that, so I'm not sure, but possibly.
Fucking, I'm going to have to look it up.
I don't know...
Pretty sure it is.
I don't... there's a couple of pieces of trivia I don't know if I should read out now, because you've not seen the sequel. I don't want to spoil it for you.
Then no.
Okay.
We'll cover it when we do the sequel.
Okay. In that case, then I have one piece of trivia left instead of 4. Among the bones that Sarah falls into is one of the wolf's head from Dog Soldiers.
Yeah, you see it right in front of her.
Yeah. It's the actual head from the movie, so I think that was a cool little touch.
I like that.
Anyways, Nico, any other pieces of trivia that you know of?
I've forgotten which one it was, but one of them was on Graham Norton, and she said she nearly pissed herself when the fucking monster came out.
Okay, there you go.
But I can't remember which one it was.
Fair enough.
Because they were that terrified, so it's just the back of what you said already.
Cool.
Because they got told... What was it they said it was again? I think they got told they looked like mole people or something. They got told they would look totally opposite if it actually appeared.
Like mole people.
It was something like that. So they'd expect to see a big hairy bastard like fucking Boomer was saying, and they see the fucking actual alien thing.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. Well, with
fuckers.
that being said, then we shall move on to our final segment, and we'll talk about the ratings and the reviews. As always, we will start off with the critics' scores. IMDb scored this movie a 7.2 out of 10, Metacritic scoring it a 7.1. Nico, what do you think the Rotten Tomatoes critics and the Rotten Tomatoes audience have scored this movie?
Well, I remember the critics were going fucking daft about it, so I'll give that like, I want to say 90.
90%?
80. 80, 90.
Pick a number.
I'll do the same as I did earlier, split a difference, 85.
Okay, and the audience?
See, it's a tough one because, as I said, Sheila, help me. Help me. A lot of help. Fuck it, 85 again.
So the Rotten Tomatoes critics, you're pretty much spot on, scored this 87%. You were right earlier. The audience not quite as high on it, scoring at 76%.
Yeah, because I remember fucking audiences. Anything. Genuinely, it was such a divide of the sexes. Like women hated this in my day. Like.
The critics' consensus: deft direction and strong performances from its all-female cast guide The Descent, a riveting, claustrophobic horror film. As always, we throw it out to our audience, our listeners and viewers, asking for your opinions and scores. We have, for the first time in a long time, actually, a nice big juicy review from Wren, who used to leave us big long reviews for every episode, but he hasn't done one for a couple of months, so he's back. Former guest Wren, if anyone wants to check out his episode, he joined us for Terrifier. Anyways, he actually says in the first line, "It's been a while since I wrote a long-winded one for you blokes, but here we go."
Before you get into that then, yeah, I've looked it up now. Okay. She is actually Cornish, so that's not even her real accent. It's funny as fuck.
There you go. Anyways, this film is tense and terrifyingly claustrophobic, and that's even before the creatures show up. It goes from one nightmare scenario right into another. Normally, that kind of drastic change of pace throws me off, but in this instance, it just ramped up the terror. The cast has incredible chemistry and feels like they've been a group of friends for a long time, so when their inside jokes and even their bickering happens, it all flows naturally. I bet they were able to ad-lib a lot. The film also does a great job of sprinkling in subplots just below the surface to add some depth to this generally straightforward idea. This is Neil Marshall's greatest accomplishment, even more so than the beloved Dog Soldiers. Sadly, this would be the last great thing he would do until the Blackwater and Watchers of the Wall episode of Game of Thrones. I give this a solid 8.5 out of 10, and it would land pretty high in my list of the best horror films in the last 20 years.
How can you not like Doomsday? It's so bad it's good. It is genuinely so bad it's good.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is, you say that all the time. You say that exact sentence. It's genuinely so bad it's good. But when we have different definitions about what's so bad it's good,
true, yeah.
that means nothing to me, Nico.
Yeah, true.
At Blupenheimer Mew gives it a solid 8 out of 10. I haven't watched it in a long time. My first viewing nearly gave me a panic attack during the scene where the girl gets stuck in the narrow alcove, but I remember thoroughly enjoying it. I'll admit that I enjoy the more bleak ending versus the theatrical. So there's someone who enjoys the UK ending more, so in agreement with us. The Bi Republic says, "This is one of my favourites. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Movie is scary as shit. I also had a near panic attack watching it the first time." A lot of people saying they're having panic attacks on this movie.
Yeah.
At Royal Holiness, hole as in, you're a hoe, gives it... yeah, there you go. Was it you?
No.
This was an 8 out of 10. Perfectly paced, and it would have worked even without the creatures. Total claustrophobic nightmare fuel. I think Nico's dying.
Oh, I had a sneezing fit. I was trying to keep it quiet. Sorry.
Bless you.
I felt like my eyes would get a pop at the skull.
Boomer now says he needs to give Doomsday a watch.
It is absolutely shit, Boomer, but you'll love it.
I think Boomer, you can put that onto because you're most of the way through your 365-day new watch list of horror. That can go on your list if you've got space.
I've been told I'm like Soul if you watch it.
Okay. Stephen Lawrence says, this movie was so much different from what I thought it would be, and that ending, sheesh, talk about a downer. I loved it. 10 out of 10. A couple of slightly more negative reviews towards the end here, but a couple more positive ones before we get to those. Horror Morgan says, one of the most uncomfortable movies I've ever seen, so I'm going to give it a hard 7. Previous guest on the show who joined us recently for Bucket List Horror doing Midsummer, LRJ Allen, gives it a 9. Once it shows the creatures in full, it loses some of its edge, but it's still a crazy, intense piece of filmmaking. So he's not a big fan of the creatures. Deborah B says, I can't help comparing it to Dog Soldiers. Same director, same essential premise. The dynamics between the teams that get isolated and hunted were so different. The men were a team, the women were a mess. That really took away from the whole film. Disappointed. I mean, we've discussed our reasonings for why we think that's the case, and I think that's the reasons are pretty easy to get on board with.
Have you seen Doomsday?
No.
So Doomsday has a lot of the folk that were in Dog Soldiers, and it's basically like the blokes are they're not all trained, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it is a strong female character in the lead, who's taking point on the whole thing. And yeah, you can see that he does it like they're an army unit, they're a group of friends. This lot are thrown together to save the world. That's basically what it is. Some of them are trained, some of them are not.
Okay. And finally, Shauner gives it a 3 out of 10. Overrated, dumb characters. All the white women look exactly the same. Cheesy monsters.
Bit racist.
There you go. So thank you to everyone for your scores and opinions. Altogether, on average, you guys, our listeners, gave The Descent an average score of 8.1 out of 10. So fairly high. That's a fairly high score. But that just leaves me and you, Nico. On a scale of 0 to 10, what would you rate The Descent?
Well, most of the characters, I'd give them 1. Hey. You're right there.
Nope. Carry on.
No, I think this is an absolutely amazing movie. It does have something that can terrify every single person in it. If you're not scared by anything in it, then join the club. It's amazing. It's a great movie, and I'll give it a 9.
Nice. Well, I think you'll be very pleased to know that this is going to be one of the very rare occasions where we are exactly spot on with each other. I think this is about as near to a perfect movie as you can make in these, especially at that time. It's a movie that's now approaching 20 years old. It's 18 years old, and it's standing the test of time. There's nothing really in this movie that would age it terribly anyway. But the monsters look great. They've obviously went to great lengths to make them look really good. The themes and the sort of dynamics of the movie, I think, work incredibly well, and are, again, also all themes that will stand the test of time. So this is a movie I think in another 20 years' time we'll still be watching and having high praise for. I'm simply taking a point off for, the fact that there's no explanation for the water at the bottom of the crevasse.
The only reason I'm taking a point off is I would have liked to have seen Juno torn to pieces.
Okay. I'm not going to make any more comment on that because, I don't want to spoil things. Okay. Well, in that case, I'm also going to give
How are you going to spoil it? We've just talked about it.
Trust me, Nico, I couldn't even begin to get into it. You just need to go watch the sequel.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
What, Juno's alive?
I'm not saying anything.
Okay, that's weird. I'm going to go watch a sequel now.
Okay. Right. I'm also giving it a 9 out of 10, just for anyone who was unclear about what my score is. So, one of the rare occasions, Nico, where we give matching scores.
Yeah.
And therefore, all of our scores, combined with you guys, our listeners, and our critic scores, gives The Descent an average score of 8.1 out of 10, and it puts it in 13th place of the now 82 movies that we have covered in the show. So you were pretty much in there. You said sort of between 10th and 20th, didn't you? Or between a 7 and an 8. So you're kind of you were originally close, but then you
I
changed.
genuinely thought it was going to be about an 8, and then I downgraded myself.
It puts it one place above Zombieland and one place below Hereditary.
Okay.
It's also 2 places below your beloved Lost Boys.
Ken Summon, I would take this up there next to Lost Boys.
Well, it is. It's just 2 places behind it. Not quite breaking into that top 10, although it's very, very close. Having a look at the movies that's above it, Dog Soldiers is still currently in 7th place. So Dog Soldiers came in ever so slightly higher, but it's literally like 0.2. I mean, this has an 8.1, Dog Soldiers is an 8.3, so it's like really, really fucking close. And I think that's about right.
Right. Yeah, because put it this way, I think Dog Soldiers is a better movie than this.
I think Dog Soldiers is a more enjoyable movie than this, but I think this is a better horror movie.
Yeah. I'd rather watch Dog Soldiers over this.
But Dog Soldiers has the comedy factor, isn't it? So it makes it a more enjoyable thing to watch, doesn't it?
And we never actually talked about the poster for this, which I'm surprised you never mentioned.
Well, there's still time. We're still recording, Nico.
The poster was like the girls in the shape of a skull.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of different posters that are sort of generally used for this movie. There's that one that we're going to use that we've been posting up for the movie, but there's also the one where it's the scene where she's climbing up the staircase of skulls and you can just see like her at the bottom. I think it's the one that's the one we're sort of using for this stream that's been flashing up across the course of this one. Well, it's not even that. I think it's just like it's more a beam of light that's just shining down onto her face in the cave. Anyways, but yeah, I think I like that poster that you talked about. I think it's really creative.
Yeah, I think it's really, really cool, but a lot of folk were like, "Oh, that's just fucking disgusting," like the way that they've done it. And I'm like, "How? It's not like they're naked."
You bet you wish they were.
True.
Yeah, exactly. Boomer says, with regards to our score, our leaderboard, that Zombieland is way too high.
Why?
It's currently in 14th place. I mean,
it's one of the best comedy fucking zombie movies you can get.
I don't think it deserves to be in 14th place. I gave it a slightly lower score than I actually gave it the lowest score out of everything. Out of the critics, I gave it the lowest score. So I genuinely think it should be a bit lower, but I'm not overly upset by the fact that Zombieland is high up there. You know, there's some
It's still a decent movie.
I think the thing is, like, and this is the one thing I think when we're talking about our leaderboard, yes, you know, if you were to just take mine and your scores and no one else's scores into account, the leaderboard would look very, very different, right?
Yeah.
But that's literally the whole point, is to try and create some sort of general consensus about where everything goes. Zombieland's currently in 14th place. If this podcast lasts, you know, for another 5, 6, 7 years, you know, we're going to cover hundreds and hundreds of horror movies. You know, Zombieland's going to be way away from that sort of top 15 at some point. There are a ton of other horror movies out there that are going to come above Zombieland. You know, it's not going to be a top 20 horror movie. It's going to drop down the list. Are there movies that are below it on our leaderboard that I think it should be above? Yes. And we have got an episode planned for our 101st episode to counter that as well. We're going to do our sort of, not a re-rating. So what I haven't said to you, Nico, is yesterday as well, what I did is I've got a second leaderboard now because I've updated all of the movies' scores from IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes and everything. So we're not going to publish that new leaderboard until we do the full 101st leaderboard. But I've already updated, and I can tell you there's some changes.
Unless Lost Boys is back in the top 10, I don't care.
Well, that also doesn't include, because we're gonna pick 3 movies each to re-rate, and a
Yeah.
movie that we either think that we were too harsh on, or we're too positive about, or too generous for. We're gonna re-rate. As of right now, I've picked my 3 movies that I'm gonna re-rate. I don't think you've picked all 3 that you. I think you've picked one.
No, I have no idea.
I have no idea, but I mean, it might not be a huge re-rating. I'm not saying we're going to re-rate something from like a 1 to a 9. It might literally just be changing like a 5 to a 6 or something, but
Yeah.
that can make all the difference. And I can tell you though, but from the initial critics ratings that have changed and the viewers ratings that have changed, there has been some movement on the leaderboard. There has been changes. So yeah, there's definitely going to be things that people need to keep an eye on. And there's been changes in and around the top 10. There's been a lot of changes in and around that sort of 20th to 40th area, but there's been some changes at the bottom as well.
Okay.
So I think a couple of movies who at the time we were recording hadn't received Metacritic scores have now received Metacritic scores as well, which I think is going to make a bit of a difference as well. So yeah, and I think us doing that, I think it's important that we do that just to try and make sure we're keeping things accurate and fresh as well.
See, I think we should have the top 10 of just our numbers on them.
I mean, I can do that.
Which ones overlap?
I can
see
do
which ones overlap.
So my top 10 and your top 10.
Yeah.
I mean,
just our scores.
I can do that. I can post something out on the socials later today doing that, because that's literally something that I can bash out really quickly.
Yeah, but we should do that with a new review and new meta and all that.
I mean,
saying that wouldn't affect it, so it doesn't matter.
No, it wouldn't affect it. But like I say, I'll have a look. I'll make a graphic up. I'll put it out on the socials.
Cool.
Okay.
Because I think it would be interesting to see our top 10s compare to each other.
Do you want to see our bottom 10s as well?
Yeah, go for it, actually.
Okay. Right, well, in that case, that is going to do it for this week's show. Nico, as always, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on again.
No problem. Up next on the show, it's your choice of movie, Nico, and what are we talking about?
I forgot what the next one is.
Of course you have. We're talking all about Stir of Echoes.
Oh yeah, that's why I've forgotten, because it was the one Amanda wanted.
What? Well, you've obviously picked that as a friend request.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking all about Stir of Echoes. That'll be interesting though.
Yeah, she requested that ages ago.
A movie that doesn't really get a lot of coverage.
Yeah.
So and we always like talking about movies that don't generally get a huge amount of coverage, as well as talking about the big ones. We haven't really. I mean, when was the last time we talked about like one of I guess The Thing? We did that a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? But we haven't been talking a lot about the sort of absolute classics of horror over the past, I would say, for the majority of this year, to be honest.
That's true.
I think when you look at movies that we've covered this year, obviously we've done a lot of new ones. We've done The Thing. You could probably put The Conjuring in there as one of the sort of giants, given its sort of status now. Blair Witch and Hellraiser. Oh, we've done a few, I guess. Blair Witch and Hellraiser are both there. Candyman's there, The Thing. But I think in general, we've done a lot of new releases this year. Evil Dead Rise, we've obviously done. We did X earlier in the year. We've done things like, what else have we done?
Megan. Did we do Pearl yet?
We haven't done Pearl yet. No, I still haven't seen Pearl. Megan.
You've not seen it yet?
I've still not seen Pearl yet. No. Megan, Knock at the Cabin. We've done. Evil Dead Rise, like I say, we've obviously done. So we've done a lot more sort of modern Becko as well, modern horror movies this year than we did last. So obviously the schedule is pretty much set, I think, for the majority of the rest of the year. We'll change things up for sort of Halloween time and of course Christmas time, because we have to do our Christmas movies, Nico.
Yep.
But
that's a hint to me, I'm guessing.
No, absolutely not. But we've got some. Well, in fairness, we've got a few of the giants of horror coming up in the next few months. But I think we're fairly sticking to our sort of theme of the year, going for lesser known, slightly more modern horror movies as well.
Yeah.
And you've obviously got you're going to give us a little exploitation walk round.
The good old 80s and 70s and 80s fucking
I'm
exploitation ones, basically.
I am. You know what? I'm looking forward to it, but I'm also dreading it. I am real.
Yeah.
No. One in particular because I'm not sure that episode is going to be broadcastable. I'm not looking forward to Frankenhooker.
Oh. Why is that not going to be broadcastable?
Because you're on the podcast.
I am not that bad.
Yeah, anyways. Right, stick around, everyone who's in the chat. Nico, just for a couple of minutes before, once I end the episode, we'll stick around and do our final goodbyes. Yeah, but so once again, thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to Nico for joining me. And until next week on the Pod of the Damned, Nico, just remember...
You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.